Good day, everyone. Welcome to the first session of our Grade 12 Work Immersion Program Pre-Employment Seminar Workshop Series. Today, our topic would be Oral Communication in English 101, creating a good impression through an impactful self-introduction. To properly begin the program, let us put ourselves in the presence of the Almighty through our morning prayer to be led by Elisa Sanchez from 12 Darwin and to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem.
Let us bow our heads to the presence of our Heavenly Father. Father God, we thank you for gathering all of us today in our first seminar workshop for work immersion. Thank you for your favor upon this event, that all things may work together for good as we learn new things and get fully inspired. We pray for a miracle of communication even in this virtual setup so that everyone involved would have a stable internet connection and no weapon of the enemy shall prosper against it. Thank you for blessing our guest speaker, Teacher Noelle, our teachers, and us students with wisdom, an alert mind, and deep understanding of today's session. We also thank you for giving us guidance and clarity for the paths we must take as we prepare for college and career life. We pray that none of this will be taken for granted and we'd be able to make the best of what we'll learn today. Everything we do, we offer it all to you. May your name be exalted through this event. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, sa sikatanan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang binirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tulog sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isa kang matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitigil, bakit tuwing ang karoon niya, kailan pa may magtitigil. Lumang ang araw ng maraming pagsikla, mo'y langit sa pibo. Ang ligaya ng pagkay pag-api, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
To welcome everyone and to give us an overview of what we should expect for today, let us hear from our Jasms Manila Acting Principal, Teacher Regina de la Cruz.
My dear grade 12 batch, we know that you have long anticipated your work immersion. That finally we can release you from the confines of our school to gather more realistic experiences directly from the field and to know more people and learn from them as well. We also look forward to bringing you there and watching you learn other essential things that our lessons from books cannot teach you. However, the pandemic situation limited everything that we planned for you, and we cannot do that anymore. While nothing replaces first-hand experiences, we do not want to miss this opportunity of still providing you with the life skills that you need, not only when you look for a job, but also when you pursue your academic endeavors. Today, I would like to begin your day with a quote from one of my favorite movies, Three Idiots. Ranchoda said, "There was knowledge everywhere. Go get it from anywhere you can." On my end, I would like to tell you, be like a sponge. Let us all be like a sponge and get all possible learnings that we could get today. The situation may not be the best right now, but each thing that happens to us, good or bad, is trying to teach us something. Let us open our minds and try to learn as much as we can, and let's do our best today. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you very much, Teacher Regina. As we are now looking forward to what we are going to learn today, let's know more about our resource speaker from Bea Torres of Grade 12 Darwin.
Our resource speaker earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication Arts at the University of Santo Tomas and is currently taking her Master of Arts degree in Philosophy at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She further enhanced her research and communication skills from her experiences as a freelance writer, former research assistant at the University of Santo Tomas Research Complex, former writer and a project coordinator in the Office of the President of the Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino, or KWF, and her marketing communications and organizational skills when she worked as an acting sales head at Cherry Credits. Her calling to pursue the teaching profession led her eventually to teach English, philosophy, media information literacy, and theater arts at PWU Jasms Quezon City campus, where she organized seminars and workshops on philosophy and theater arts for high school students. In the present, she is a faculty member of PWU JASAMS, High School Manila, teaching oral communication, junior high school English, and philosophy. My dear teachers, fellow students, and the rest of our virtual audience, let us welcome with a warm round of applause our guest speaker for today, Teacher Maria Noelle Motril.
Okay, so thank you so much, Bea, and good morning to everyone. Good morning to my fellow colleagues and the students here in this G Meet, as well as those watching today. Okay, so welcome to this talk, and I hope that you all learn from it. All right, so today's topic will be about creating a good impression through an impactful self-introduction. But first things first, let's have an icebreaker, all right, to warm ourselves up. I know it's really early in the morning, so it's also to wake us up in a way. So can I call back onto the screen Zachary and Bea to participate in this icebreaker that I've prepared. All right, so I'll be demonstrating what you guys are going to do, and I hope you guys can follow it. Don't worry, it's not going to be that difficult. Okay, so first, for the first icebreaker or icebreaker A, let's clasp our hands like this. All right, so hold it and then, sorry, I have to turn on the next side. Look at your thumb. Is your left thumb over your right thumb, or is your right thumb over your left thumb? So I hope those who are watching are also doing this. All right, so you guys take note of which thumb is over the other. As for me, it's actually the right thumb over my left. All right, so the second one, icebreaker B, cross your arms like this. I don't know if you can see me, like cross your arms like this, like you're bored. You're stuck in line and you're bored. Okay, so which arm goes over the other? Is it your left arm or your right arm? So take note of that as well. As for me, it's the left arm that goes over my right. Okay, so thank you so much, Zachary and Bea. But I hope you do get to stay because there's actually an explanation to this, to this icebreaker that we're having right now. Okay, so according to popular psychology, this can actually, like the icebreakers that we just did, these can actually give us an indication of whether we are left brain or right brain dominant, or a little bit of both. Okay, so these are the verdicts according to pop psychology. So for icebreaker A, if the right thumb goes over the left thumb, and for icebreaker B, if your left arm goes over your right arm, so that means that there's a balanced use of both sides of the brain, although the right side is used more often. So this is actually where I fall under, all right, because I'm actually left-handed. Yeah, but for the second icebreaker, it's my left arm that goes over the right. So the right side of my brain is used more often. All right. So what about you, Zach? Which uh, which result do you fall under?
Teacher,
Did you get the
mine is,
same thing?
uh, sorry. Teacher, mine is actually A right plus B left.
Oh, so we got the same thing.
Yes, true.
Right. Right. So we're both we mostly use the right side of our brains more often. All right. So the second one, it's A right. So if your right thumb goes over your left in the first icebreaker, and if your right arm goes over your left as well when you cross your arm. So the use of the right brain in most situations is applied. So that's AKA you are right brain dominant. All right. So what about you, Bea? What did you get from the list?
For my answer are, my answer is the same as yours.
Oh, really? So the three of us all got the same result. We are all right brain dominant. Or well, balanced use, but yeah, the right side of the brain is used more often. And then for the third bullet, um, if the left thumb goes over the right, and if the left arm goes over the right as well, that means you are left brain dominant. And lastly, um, if the left thumb goes over the right, and if right the right arm goes over the left, basically you have balanced use of both sides of the brain, although the left side is used more often. All right, so I hope everyone participated in the icebreaker, and I will get on to the meaning of uh, being left brain or right brain. All right, so according to pop psychology, being right brain dominant entails that you are more on the creative side as opposed to the analytical side, right? So it deals more with emotion, with music, with creative writing, with imagination, with art, okay, with emotions. So it's all about emotional expression. However, if you are left brain dominant, or if the left side of your brain is used more often, then you are more on the analytic side of things. All right, so this is where logic comes in. This is where the maths and engineering and probably the hard sciences come in. Okay, so it's all very technical and analytical. All right, that is according to psychology. And if you're going to look closer in this part, so according to popular psychology as well, the left side of the brain also um, houses the language skills of a person. Okay, so I hope people are connecting the dots or getting to know themselves better through this test or through this icebreaker. But let me just go back to the part where language being housed in the left brain. Okay, so although this is traditionally known, okay, that doesn't mean that if you are right brain dominant, you can't learn about language. Of course you can. Anyone can. Right? And that goes, the same thing goes rather for any other skill. Like for example, I'm right brain dominant, but that doesn't mean that I can't be logical or that I cannot be analytic, right? So regardless of which side of the brain of yours is most dominantly used, um, it still it still is worth your time to learn any of the skills. And in relation for today's topic, for language as well. All right, so let's move on to the presentation itself. So we're going to talk about making a good impression and how to nail that interview with tips from yours truly. So I will not just be talking about tips or pieces of advice from a very scholastic standpoint, but I will also be drawing from my own experiences as well. All right, so um, first of all, obviously you have to prepare for the interview, or this is the part where I like to call it the pre-interview preparation. So what you're going to do is when you do receive an offer for an interview is that you have to do your research on the company that you are applying for. So in every slides, by the way, I've listed down do's and don'ts. So here are some do's that you guys can do, all right, when doing research on the company. So do some research on the history, the current events, the services that the company provides, who they cater to, right, and what exactly it is that they do. So that would be an advantage for you when the interview actually takes place, and the interviewers will most likely ask you, what do you know about our company? But because you have done your research, you can answer that confidently, right? However, these are just a just a word of caution from me. Do not show up to the interview without doing your homework. Okay, I don't mean this literally. It's a figure of speech, meaning don't show up unprepared, because the interviewers asking the interviewees, in this case that would be you in the future, what they know about the company is actually a very common question, right? I think personally in all of the interviews that I have been part of as an interviewee, I think 9 times out of 10, I have been asked this question. So before coming in, it's important that you guys do your research on the company. Okay, so tip from myself, make sure to show genuine interest in the company, right? So don't act as if you're bored, don't act as if you're disinterested, or especially don't act as if they are just a backup company for you, just in case you don't get into the company that you actually want. All right. Being realistic, of course, we do have certain companies that we sort of put in the back burner, but try not to make it obvious. Okay. And the bottom line is, why apply for a company if you're not actually interested in what they do? Okay, so it's something for you guys to think about as well. Okay, so next, in the pre-interview preparation, remember that communication is not always verbal. All right, so my students from my oral communication class, um, I've always emphasized this to them. So translation, be mindful of your nonverbal communication. So what could possibly entail nonverbal communication? All right, so these are the following examples. So do be mindful of your hygiene. Okay, so if by some miracle you're actually get to called in by the company because the pandemic is over and everything. So the interview will be in person as opposed to it being virtual. So let's imagine that scenario. Um, when you do get there, please do make sure that you have taken a shower, you've brushed your teeth, you have groomed yourselves properly. All right, don't just roll out of bed and get to the interview. Okay, so another thing is dress appropriately. Um, you have to dress professionally, especially if it's a corporate company. Right? So in the corporate world, you guys can wear slacks or probably a pencil skirt for the females, um, a button-up shirt. Okay, so I apologize. I don't know much about men's fashion, but business attire. Okay, so I'm not sure if this would apply to some of you, but just a general reminder as well. No visible tattoos should be seen by the interviewer, and the piercings should be kept to a minimum. Okay, so for the women watching, um, just the two piercings here at the bottom of the ears can do or can be accessorized. All right, so if you have multiple piercings elsewhere, um, it's best not to accessorize that. Okay, so what else? Be mindful of your body language as well. Okay, so sit up straight, be mindful of your posture, and also remember to smile. Okay, so regardless of what you're feeling, act as if you're very confident and that you actually do believe in yourself, in your abilities, and um, just exude that you're very happy and you're very grateful for the company giving you their time for an interview. Okay, so in addition to being prepared physically with your hygiene, with your body language, and with how you look and dress, I'd also like to give an additional reminder that um, if in case your interview will be in person, bring copies of your resume or your curriculum vitae, right? So maybe 2 or 3 copies, extra copies rather, of your resume will do, because the interviewer would sometimes ask for a copy of your resume while they are about to start the interview. Right? So in addition to that, bring 1 by 1 and 2 by 2 sized pictures of yourself. Again, obviously these pictures have to be professional pictures of yourselves. And the reason for this is that you might be hired on the spot and you will be asked to fill out forms. Okay, and usually, at least I'm speaking for myself, in my experience, the most common size of a professional picture that they will be asking for is the 2 by 2 pictures. But it wouldn't hurt for you guys to also have 1 by 1 pictures of yourselves, um, just in case. Okay, so before I forget, another reminder, it, what also entails dressing appropriately is makeup, right? So for the people here who like to experiment with makeup, keep it to a minimum. Keep it simple, keep it light, keep it fresh, sure, and also keep it professional. So I think there would be no need to use eyeshadow perhaps or face paint. Okay, it doesn't have to look as though your makeup was inspired by a Halloween makeup tutorial on YouTube or on Instagram. All right, so just a light dress code, or sorry, just a light makeup routine would do. Okay. Oh, and for the jewelry as well, please keep the jewelry to a minimum. And the same goes for your perfume. Okay, make sure that your perfume is not too strong smelling, right? Because perfumes are also part of nonverbal communication, and that's something you have to be mindful for as well, because the interviewer will notice that. Okay, so next, here are some don'ts. Okay, so please do not neglect your appearance, as I mentioned earlier, and please do not be the sluggish version of yourself, and please do not present yourself inappropriately. I know that our grade 12 students, okay, are responsible enough and are smart enough to take care of themselves. Okay, so please do not neglect your hygiene, and please do not violate the company's dress code. Okay, so let's all be mindful of that as well, because that can also affect the interviewer's first impression of you. All right, so here's a tip from myself. Keep in mind that the interview starts the moment you leave your house. All right, that is in the case of face-to-face interviews. But if not, the interview starts the moment you turn on your device, if it's a virtual interview. Okay, so be very ready, at least with how you look as well. Okay, so moving on. All right, so I've actually inserted some pictures here of people displaying certain type of postures or gestures, and basically their body language that you should not imitate. All right, so let's take this guy here. All right, so he is being interviewed by the two gentlemen who are not facing the camera. Okay, so this guy is chewing gum while being interviewed. So obviously that is a big no-no, okay? So act professionally. Please do not chew gum in front of your interviewers, because that is considered to be impolite. All right? Even more so if you actually eat in front of the interviewers. All right? So please do not do that. Make sure you have a hearty meal before you leave the house, and make sure you're not dehydrated as well. Okay, so next example. All right. Sometimes when you are being called for an interview, especially if it's an in-person interview, you will not be, more often than not, you will not be the only one who will be interviewed for that day. Right? So there are other potential employees and applicants who will also be interviewed during that day, and more often than not, you will be asked to wait in a line. Right? So you have to wait for your turn, wait until your name is called before you actually get to be interviewed. So let's take the case of this guy right here. He is sleeping. He's taking a nap while waiting for his turn to be interviewed, which is a no-no. All right, so remember that the moment you guys step into the company, you are already being observed. Okay, so please do not do this. Just in case that the time comes where in-person interviews will be possible again, and you will be asked for an in-person interview. So remember not to take a nap as well, or to slouch even while waiting in line. Okay? So next. All right, so the way that I interpret this picture is that probably the guy messed up or may have said something inappropriate that is not related to being a professional or to the job at hand. Okay, so he messed up and he's bummed out about it. He's anxious and everything. And the interviewer is just there, staring at him, shooting daggers at him. All right. So remember also to watch what you say and do. All right. Remember to always present yourselves accordingly and to not do anything inappropriate. Okay, because the result of that is the interview hasn't even fully come to an end yet, and the interviewer has already decided not to hire you in their minds at least. Okay, so sometimes it's the body language that gives that away, or sometimes it's how you look. Like for example, if you violate their dress code, or it's your posture or your facial expressions, or you have done something inappropriate that has led to such a premature decision not to hire you as early on. Okay, so obviously that's not something our grade 12 students would want. So again, be mindful because all your efforts to actually show up and prepare for an interview would just end with a resounding no from your interviewer. Okay, so we move on to the next part, the interview proper. All right, so now that you have actually prepared the documents that you need, as I mentioned earlier, and you've also taken care of how you guys present yourselves, your appearance, and everything, we move on to the interview proper. So imagine that you are in the company and after waiting for some time, your name has already been called for an interview because you're up next. So when you enter the room, because usually interviewers take you to another room where the interview will be held, prepare for small talk. Okay, so usually and they would be multitasking, right? So don't be surprised if after offering you to take a seat, they will be walking around the room, getting documents or getting some papers ready before the interview. Okay, so usually while the interviewer is preparing the necessary documents for your interview, they would engage you in small talk. Okay, so what is small talk? Obviously, we will not take this phrase literally, but small talk means it's just very casual conversation, just so things wouldn't be awkward or just so things wouldn't be as tense, and to also pass time as well. Be ready for small talk. Okay, so they might ask you questions about yourselves, or sometimes they might ask you, oh, how was the weather? Did you have a hard time traveling from your place to our company? So even if it's just small talk, be sure to still be professional. Right? So do let your social skills shine. Show the interviewers how articulate you are. So, for example, they already lead you to the room and they're prepared the necessary documents that they need to prepare before the interview starts with you. And then the interviewer asks you, "Oh, so how are you? How are you today?" And then obviously you would respond, "I'm very well, thank you." And also, it would be nice if you also ask them how they are doing as well. Okay, so it's going to be, "I'm fine, thank you. How are you?" Right? And then they're going to respond back. Okay, so that would be nice if you ask them as well. Then they're going to probably ask you questions while preparing, as I mentioned. They'll probably talk about the weather as well. So this is actually your chance to improvise. Okay, and a chance to show them that you're very receptive and you're very warm towards them. So it's a plus, even though it's just small talk. Right? So don't, here are some don'ts when engaging in small talk. Don't ask personal questions. All right? So do not ask the interviewer if they're single. All right? Do not ask the interviewer about their personal life or about their families as well, because you just met. And obviously, it's not also appropriate to ask personal questions at a professional setting. Okay, so another don't, do not sound egotistical. Okay, so when the interviewer asks, how are you? Instead of just saying, I'm fine, thanks for asking, you say, oh, I'm doing great. I know I'm going to get this job. All right, so please do not sound egotistical. Okay, and also, please do not be rude. Right, so remember to acknowledge the interviewer and smile and have a very warm and receptive body language as well. Okay, so do not forget your manners. Okay, so tip from yours truly, and this is based on my experience, physical as it sounds, act natural. Okay, you should feel, you should not, I'm sorry, you should not feel the need to desperately impress the interviewers. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with being yourself, but you cannot be yourself while still being professional. So be the professional version of yourself. Okay, so we move on to the next slide. Also, still in the interview proper. So, introduce yourself professionally while letting your personality shine. Okay, so here are some do's. Um, do be confident, do speak naturally, and do be mindful of your grammar and vocabulary, and be gracious and polite. Okay, so another thing that you guys can also um, adapt or do in your interview, should it be an in-person interview, is having a firm handshake. Regardless if you're a guy or you're a girl, it pays to have a firm handshake as well. Because obviously they will shake your hand. And to also have eye contact as well. Okay, so how would you introduce yourself? Right? Because they will also, it's actually a common question for interviewers to ask. Um, so tell me about yourself. So usually they ask that during the start of the interview, after the small talk and everything. And this is how you can respond. And I will use myself as an example. Okay, so the interviewer asked me to tell me something about myself. So I would say, hi, I'm Maria Noelle Motril, but you can call me Noelle. I'm 25 years old. I live in Mandaluyong City. I graduated from the University of Santo Tomas with the course AV Communication Arts, but I am currently taking up my Master of Arts degree in Philosophy in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I am a writer by heart. I also teach, and I have a passion for philosophical research. So when you do introduce yourself, make sure that it is still related to being professional. Okay, so you don't have to be overly elaborate with your hobbies or with your whole life story. Okay, so remember that your introduction should always be very much hinged on being professional. Okay, and it's also your chance to kind of subtly show off your skills. So when I in my introduction with the example I gave earlier, Um, Me mentioning that I am a writer by heart and I'm a teacher shows the interviewer that okay, so she probably has great proofreading or editing skills, since those are skills needed for being a writer. Okay, and with being a teacher, it also shows the interviewer that they're probably going to think, okay, so she can handle being a team leader. Okay, so the skills related to whatever activities about yourself that you mentioned will also give the interviewers an idea of what you can do. Okay, and about your skills, about your abilities as well. Right, so that's just a tip. Okay, things not to do when introducing yourselves in a professional setting. Okay, so do not be overconfident, or on the other side of the spectrum, show your lack of confidence. Okay, because based on my experience, I've also heard stories about applicants during an interview who introduce themselves like this. This is just an example. This is not something that I would say in an actual interview. Okay. Hi, I am Noelle Motril. You can call me Noelle. I'll have you know that I graduated top of my class. Okay, so um, do not introduce yourself that way. Okay, you're being very overconfident, or it's as if you're bragging. All right, so on the other side of the spectrum, again, do not show that you are nervous and that you lack self confidence. Okay, so I'm not saying you should fake it until you make it. It's just that, first of all, you have to believe that you are very much capable of getting getting, okay, and that you are talented and that you are skillful. Okay, so as cliche as it sounds, it starts from within. All right, so another don't when you introduce yourself, please do not act disinterested in the company. Because as I mentioned earlier, why bother with all the effort and all the energy that you conjure to apply for a company that you're not even interested in? Okay, so please keep that in mind. Another thing is, do not code switch, or do not avoid, sorry, please do avoid code switching unless the interviewer does the same. All right, so for those who are unfamiliar with the term, code switching means using or switching between different languages at the same time. So let's take Tagalog and English, or Taglish, for example. All right, so most companies, they expect you to speak in English. Okay, but if the interviewer starts to speak in Tagalog or is asking you questions in Tagalog, then you respond in Tagalog. If the interviewer speaks to you in English, then you respond in English. Okay? But if the interviewer speaks to you in Taglish, then I think it would, sure, you can respond in Taglish, but it would be more ideal if you can fluently speak, let's say, English, and then just use straight English for the entirety of the interview, or in Tagalog, for example. All right, so avoid code switching. And also, again, as always, please do not say or do anything inappropriate. All right, so here's another tip from me. You can still be yourself professionally, and to somehow ease the anxiety or the nervousness, observe how charismatic people are. So perhaps you can watch celebrities you look up to, or other personalities, like for example, a world leader, who is very much charismatic. Observe how they are and try to take mental notes of how they act in different kinds of situations, especially in professional ones. All right, so um, this is just the first part of my talk for today, and let's have a movement break. Zachary, please take the floor to formally announce this.
Let us now have a 30-minute movement break. Be sure to be back at 9:30 a.m. Again, let us now have a 15-minute movement break. Be sure to be back. A 30-minute movement break. Be sure to be back at 9:30.
Okay, so welcome back everyone to our talk, creating a meaningful self-introduction, okay, and enhancing your oral communication skills as well. So let us pick up where we left off. All right, so um, this is one of the bullets for the interview proper, which is introducing yourself professionally while letting your personality shine through. All right, so I'd like to take time to draw attention to one of the do's here in introducing yourself in a professional setting, which is being mindful of your grammar and vocabulary. Okay, so let's have a review of basic grammar skills to aid you in your interview. Right, so we move on to the next slide. Here are the following common grammatical errors. Right, so the first of all, subject-verb agreement, which is what I commonly hear, not just from my friends or family members sometimes, but also um, with my previous work experiences as well, even in interviews. Right, so always remember that a singular subject always follows a singular verb, or is followed by a singular verb rather, and plural subject would mean that the verb would also be in plural form. Okay, so I think that's a very basic rule in grammar, and there are loads of examples that I'm sure our grade 12 students can think of. Okay, so we move on to the next grammatical error. All right, so pronoun disagreement. Okay, so one of the things you also need to be mindful of when speaking and writing as well is following consistent pronoun use. All right, so I'll be giving an example. This is the incorrect version of the sentence. Every girl must dye their hair. Okay, so when we correct that, it would be every girl must dye her hair. Okay, so especially if you don't, if the sentence implies that you don't know each girl personally, so therefore we must follow the pronoun her. Okay, and obviously the noun girl is feminine, so the pronoun that should be ideally used is feminine as well. Okay, so we move on to the next one. Okay, misplaced modifiers. All right, so I'll be giving you an example. So this is the incorrect sentence. At 8 years old, my father gave me a pony. Okay, so this one is a little confusing because um, if you're a listener or a reader of this sentence, it would sort of create that interruption in your mind because you aren't really sure who the sentence is referring to after the phrase at 8 years old. Okay, so does it mean that when your father was 8 years old, he gave you a pony, or was it you, or was it the speaker rather? Okay, so when we correct that, the sentence would be, when I was 8 years old, my father gave me a pony. Okay, so the corrected version is clearer when it comes to the modifiers, or at least when it comes to who the subject is in the sentence. Okay, as opposed to the incorrect version. Okay, so please avoid that because one of the things that the interviewers would also sort of observe is how articulate you are, and that would also entail your grammar and your vocabulary. Okay, and this would also help, in addition to sort of help giving you tips on verbal interviews. Please remember that you will also be asked to take tests, okay, during your application process. So one of the tests would also be a test in grammar or in vocabulary or both. So it helps to also have a review somehow of grammar. Okay, so next one, having no clear antecedent. So for example, the incorrect sentence is, the dad found the boy and he was happy. So it's kind of similar to the misplaced modifiers because the usage of he in this sentence is confusing. Okay, because the pronoun he can either refer to the dad or the boy. Okay, so it's unclear. So when we correct that, the sentence is going to be, the dad was happy when he found the boy. So now it's clear that the dad was the one who was happy when he found the boy. Okay, so be mindful of having clear antecedents. All right. So another thing is ending a sentence with a preposition. Okay, so it's probably very common for us to hear or to read sentences such as these, but they are actually grammatical errors. Okay, so for example, this is the incorrect sentence. What reason did he come here for? Okay, it may sound like it is grammatically correct, but it is actually not. So the corrected version is, for what reason did he come here? Right? So let's all be mindful of that, especially it's just an observation of mine that Filipino English tends to have sentences such as this one. Okay, so again, please be mindful of the following common grammatical errors. So moving on, again, back to the interview proper. Build rapport with your interviewer. Okay, so just because it's a professional setting doesn't mean that you should not be engaging or you should not be receptive to the interviewer. So as I mentioned earlier, you can be receptive to or with your interviewer rather. Okay, so it also pays to be warm. It also pays to be very accommodating with their questions and having a very pleasing personality because it also tells the interviewer what your social skills are like. And your social skills or your interpersonal skills, it's a plus if those skills are very strong on your end working in a company, even if you're just an intern or whether you're officially employed. So the social skills will come in handy, right? So when building rapport, these are some do's. Okay, do create a great atmosphere, right? So avoid being tense, avoid being antagonistic, okay, avoid being condescending. Just create a very laid back but still a professional atmosphere. Okay, so again, have a firm handshake, smile, be gracious, and have or make eye contact with the interviewer. Although that doesn't mean that you have to actually maintain the eye contact the entirety of the interview. Okay, that's a little creepy. I mean, just what I mean by this is make frequent eye contact. Okay, like just the right amount of eye contact. All right. Here are some don'ts when you are trying to build rapport with your interviewer. Do not create tension. Do not disrespect the interviewer and do not show disinterested body language. All right, so I think that's a given. Okay, here's another tip. Keep in mind that you can only make a good first impression once. Okay, so first impressions, they don't come a second time around, right? The person's perception of you may change, but the only time you actually get to make a great first impression happens only once. So take that chance, grab the opportunity, especially when it comes to a professional setting. You can start up strong and then you finish strong as well, right? So, with regards to grammar, a related question would be, can you use idioms in a job interview, or would it be ideal to use idioms in a job interview? And this is my personal take on it. Yes, you may. Yes, you can. But as long as the idioms are still related to the setting, which is a very professional setting, and also related to um, the job itself. Okay, so here are some professionally acceptable idioms to use. Okay, so the first one, think outside the box. Okay, this is actually a very common idiom being used by the interviewers themselves. Okay, so they might tell you, okay, we need someone, we need an intern who can think outside the box, or we need an employee who can think outside the box. It's a very common phrase or idiom that you can actually hear in the corporate world. So it's acceptable for you to use that. The second one is on the same page. Okay, so it's also another expression that you hear from the interviewers. So for example, if you say, I am a good team player and I never miss a deadline. And then the interviewer might say something along the lines of, that's exactly what the company needs. I am glad we are on the same page about our work ethic. All right, so um, that's also being used in the professional setting. Another one is land on your feet. All right, and taking the bull by the horns. So it's more of showing leadership, showing initiative, and um, having some sense of control over stressful situations. I so miss the mark is another idiom that is professionally acceptable. It may seem or it may sound like a negative uh, idiom or an idiom with a negative connotation, but you can say it like this: I never miss a mark, or I rarely miss a mark, meaning you rarely miss deadlines, okay? Because you're always on time. All right, so another idiom is raise the bar, all right? Meaning you can go beyond the expectations or you can actually increase standards, right? Hit the nail on the head. Okay, so it's another expression as well. And also jump through hoops. Okay, so these are some professionally acceptable idioms that you can definitely use in a corporate setting or in a professional setting, and which are also being used by interviewers themselves and employees as well. Okay, so another tip from yours truly during the interview is you can actually highlight both your technical and interpersonal skills. So, what do I mean by technical skills? These are the so called hard skills. Like, for example, what are some examples of hard skills? Perhaps if you're an arts and design student, then your hard skills would be probably uh, Photoshop, okay, the use of Photoshop or painting, all right, or creating blueprints, something to that effect. Okay, so apart from the hard skills or the technical skills, you can also highlight your interpersonal skills. Because as I mentioned earlier, having great social skills is a plus in any company, right? So here are some do's. Do emphasize your strengths as they truly are, okay? So while your skills may be impressive, please make sure that you are not over or under exaggerating your skills, okay? And it's important to be honest about our skills and abilities as well, right? So another thing is you should show your eagerness to learn new skills. I mean, let's admit it. Even I myself, at my age, I'm still not an expert on some things, right? So I can easily admit that, but I'm not going to say it in a way that, oh, I don't know how to do this particular skill or I don't know how to do that. I have no idea, and so on. I'm not going to say it in that way. What I can say is, I am willing to learn this particular skill that is required of me, right? So choose your words wisely as well. Okay, and also talk about your accomplishments. So, for example, if you've been published in, let's say, a journal or in a magazine, then you can mention that. All right, so if, for example, you have received awards for your skills or your talents, then you can also mention that as long as these accomplishments and these skills are are true. Okay, so it's important to be honest about what we have accomplished and also our strengths. Okay, so don't, here are some don'ts. Okay, so when highlighting your technical and interpersonal skills, do not overemphasize, meaning you're sort of exaggerating your skills. You're claiming to be an expert of something, but you're actually just an intermediate, um, an intermediate artist, for example, or intermediate writer. Okay, so be honest about your skill level as well. On the other end of the spectrum, do not minimize your skills. So, for example, the interviewer is looking at your resume, and let's say he or she comes across the part where you have been published in a newspaper, for example, in a major newspaper here in the Philippines. So the interviewer would obviously react to that. So most likely their reaction would be, oh wow, so you've been published by this particular newspaper in our country. Your work has been published there. Do not respond in such a way that, oh, that's nothing. That's I'm not very interested about that. It's not a big deal. So like, um, you can acknowledge your accomplishments and your skills, just as long as again you don't have to sound overconfident about them or to sound very egotistical. Okay, so another don't is do not be condescending. Okay, so you may have graduated top of your class, you may have been you may have made a name for yourself in your chosen field at such a young age. And while they are something to be proud of, do not be condescending and do not act as if you are better than everyone else. Okay? Because that puts the interviewer in a very awkward situation, and it's very telling of your character as a person as well. So please avoid or please do not be condescending at all. Okay, so another don't is do not talk about yourself incessantly. All right, so you might monopolize the situation or the conversation and not realize it. Okay, so remember to let the interviewer speak as well. Again, as one of the tips that I mentioned earlier, build rapport. Okay, you cannot build rapport with an interviewer if it's just you speaking all the time or if it's just you monopolizing the conversation. You have to let the interviewer ask questions, and you also have to let the interviewer have space to respond to whatever it is that you're saying and to also react to what you're saying. Okay, so those are some tips to keep in mind. And also a personal tip of mine, maintain the balance between what you actually know and what you've accomplished while still being humble about the skills you have yet to master. Okay, so we've already gone through that. So please remember that. Be honest about your skills and accomplishments at the skill level that you think you are in. Okay, so for example, you can write, but do not claim to be an expert if you have not mastered writing or you have not mastered painting or any other skill. Okay, because there is still so much more to learn. And companies usually want to hire potential employees who are very eager to learn new skills. Okay, so next, what to do after the interview. All right, so the interview is over. You think you've nailed it. All right, so does it mean that the communication between you and the interviewer should stop while waiting for a call back? Okay, so not necessarily. All right, so first of all, after the interview, follow up quickly. So if they reach out to you, they send you a text message or they call you or they send you an email, respond promptly. Okay? And just because the interview has already taken place does not mean that you have to stop being professional. You should still be professional even after the interview and even when you get hired as well. Okay, so here are some do's for the post interview. When it comes to following up quickly, do send a handwritten note if possible, only if it's possible. Okay, if not, send an email or a text message expressing your thanks. Okay, so thank the interviewer for their time and thank the interviewer for the effort as well. Okay, so again, respond promptly and still maintain being professional. Okay, so here are some don'ts when following up. Do not feel bitter should your application be rejected. Okay, so there are times when companies would reach out to you to say that you got the job, but there are also times when they would reach out to you they have moved on with another applicant or they have not chosen your application at the time that you have applied. Okay, so it's natural to feel down, it's natural to be upset, but do not dwell on it too much because there are other opportunities for you guys to take. Okay? Most of all, do not express contempt. So, for example, you receive an email from the company saying that they have decided not to move forward with your application at the time that you have applied. Do not send them a hate mail, okay? And do not send them a long text message or an email ranting to them on why they they basically didn't choose you to become part of their team. Okay? Please don't do that. That's very unprofessional. And just so you guys know, some companies actually keep the records and the resumes and the CVs of those who have applied but were not able to make the cut because that's for their future reference as well. So, for example, a job opening comes up, and because you have so graciously um, started the interview well and you have been so professional all throughout the entirety of the interview and even after the interview, and even when they reached out to you to let you know that you did not make the cut, they might actually consider you again. When an opportunity arises or when a job opening or a job posting comes up, okay, so be sure to be professional regardless of the result of your application. Okay, so another don't, do not be aloof. Okay, so when they reach out to you, for whatever reason, whether you got in or whether they need another interview from you or whether they want you to take a test, okay, do not ignore them. All right? So it's important to respond promptly. All right. So another thing is do not take too long to respond as well. All right? So you might actually miss the opportunity if you take too long to respond. So here's a tip. Whatever the outcome of the interview is, remember to pat yourself on the back for putting yourself out there. Okay, so that's a start. That's a good start for you, regardless of the outcome of the interview or the application itself. At least you're putting yourself out there. At least you're trying. At least you're exerting the effort. Right? So keep those in mind. Keep all the pieces of advice in mind, and you might actually even get hired on the spot. If the interviewers are so impressed with you, you might actually get hired on the spot, or you might just get hired in general. Okay, so it's important to present yourselves accordingly, professionally, and having a very professional mindset as well. Okay, so we have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I will leave you all with this quote from David Meister. Professional is not a label you give yourself. It's a description you hope others will apply to you. So I hope that you ponder on this thought as you go on about your work immersion. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this helped.
Unang kailaban.
Thank you for the very informative talk, Teacher Noel. Now, students, if you have questions, please type them in your Google Meet chat box so that your teachers may relay them to us and the research speaker may answer them.
Okay, so we have a question from Alisa Sanchez. All right, so should we be honest if they ask us about our weaknesses? All right, so that's a good question because most of the time the interviewers would ask you, what are your strengths and weaknesses? So when it comes to the weaknesses, I know it can be nerve wracking, but yes, you can be honest, but you can play with your words. Like, for example, I'll use myself as an example. My weakness is that um, I am bad at math, for example. I'm not that very good at math. So instead of saying directly that my weakness is math, I'm very bad at it, you cannot trust me when it comes to anything math related, instead of being very direct, you can say that, okay, so these are my strengths, blah, blah, blah. And then you can say, my weakness is that I have a challenging time when it comes to um, math related concerns. So you can say it in that way. Or you can be more specific. Like, for example, if there is a field in math that you are, that you are not particularly well versed in. Like, for example, I am bad at finance. Okay, so I can say it in a way that although I can, although I have um, attention to detail, I find finance to be a particularly challenging field, but of course, I am still very much willing to be mentored in the field of finance. So you can say it in that way, right? So you can choose your words. Okay, so we have a question from Zachary Vega. So, what are the possible reactions of the interviewer to the interviewee if they have code switch? Um, so, for example, in the scenario where the interviewee just code switches of their own will, okay, obviously the interviewer will not react negatively to your face. Obviously, they will not show their reaction, but they will be taking note of it that you code switched, right? So that's why I encourage you guys to only code switch when the interviewer does so. But it would be more ideal if you stick to one language. So it's usually English by most companies. But for example, if you applied for a company that is, let's say, an NGO, for example, that focuses on the Philippine dialects, for example, a company like that. So if they speak to you in Tagalog or any other dialect that you know, then you may answer them in Tagalog or in the same dialect that they are using to speak with you. Okay, but to to wait for them to sort of make that initiative. Okay, so another question from Rebecca Torres. What can the interviewee do if the interviewer is acting rude and disinterested towards them? That is a great question because sometimes it can be the other way around where the interviewee, or sorry, if the interviewer is the one acting rude and disinterested. So regardless, despite that example or despite that scenario, still maintain professionalism, right? So let them act rude, let them act disrespectful or disinterested towards you, as long as you still maintain your composure, as long as you still maintain being professional. But in the long run, you also kind of have to think, okay, na like, would you want to work for a company whose employers are rude or whose employers are acting like bullies? So it's something for you to ponder on, and that's actually a very harsh, one of the harsh realities of looking for employment. All right. So the important thing is you are still professional. Okay, so we have a question from Juan Rafael Talon. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. From grade 12 Humes. Teacher, how can you still leave a strong impression to your interview when the characteristic they are looking for is one of your weaknesses? Um, like, I would assume this, what you meant by that is that they are, when they ask you to tell them one of your weaknesses, um, just like what I've mentioned earlier, you sort of have to choose your words wisely. Okay, so even when you're talking about your weaknesses, if you show them that you're willing to learn, if you show them that you are teachable and you are easy to mentor, if you show them that you're humble enough to admit that there are skills that you have yet to master, then you can still um, leave strong impression with the interviewer. Okay, or you can also very subtly highlight your strengths. So, for example, using the example earlier that let's say I'm bad at finance, I can sort of make up for it by being articulate during my interview, right? Or being I can make up for it with my credentials. Okay, so that's how you can also leave a strong impression despite the interviewer asking you what are your weaknesses. Okay, so from Francesca Kiro from 12 Darwin, how do we prepare for the question where, quote, where or how do you see yourself in 5 years, end of quote? Well, where do you literally see yourselves in 5 years? Time, professionally. I'm sure you guys have, I'm sure you guys have also thought about this question on your own, right? I'm sure you've reflected on this. I'm sure you have your goals, so you can mention your professional goals. So, for example, if you ask me, where do I see myself in 5 years? I see myself having published more articles or having organized more seminars in philosophy. Of course, it's something that I honestly want for myself, and it is a goal that I wish to accomplish. Okay, so it's literally how you see yourself in 5 years. So we have a question from Luis Philippine Barrios. How to respond if asked, what are my previous work experience if I never had one? Okay, so then tell them that instead of being very direct, that directly saying that I have zero work experience, then you can say it in such a way that my work-related experience mostly comes from academics or in a school setting. Or you can also say, I am looking to immersing myself in a work experience. Okay, because for sure the interviewers will also ask you that if you have previous work experience. And again, I'm sure your other teachers have also mentioned this. You have to be honest with your resume as well. So if they see that you have no work experience yet, so of course they're bound to ask you that. All right. So I mean, there's no way of escaping that fact. So you can answer it that way. Right? It's either most of your work-related experiences are in an academic setting, or perhaps you have a family business that you lend your assistance to. So you can also mention that. Okay. All right. So from Daniela Isabel Granoli of Grade 12 Humes. All right, so the question is, the K to 12 curriculum prepares learners for the workforce after graduating high school. However, is it true that employers still prefer college graduates? This could be merely based on your experience or observation. Thank you. All right, so thank you for that question. Yes, it's still a reality that most employers still prefer college graduates. But in the recent years, or recently rather, I think I just saw a job posting a few days ago. I think my one of my friends had posted an opening for his company, and he is actually looking to accept senior high school graduates. So gradually people or employers or companies are being more open to that idea, because remember that the senior high school, the K to 12 curriculum, it has only been added like a few years ago. So um, of course, most companies and employers will still hold on to the sort of traditional way of employment, where you only work for, or you only look for jobs after you graduate college. But slowly, gradually, people or employers are already sort of being open to the idea. Okay, so it depends on your skills as well, and it depends on what you have to offer for them. Okay, so from Adrian Gabriel Balcos of Faraday, what are your recommendations or go-to lines to save an awkward interview? That's actually a good question, because I have never I've never I would say I've never been in an awkward interview before. But it's like being in a ball game, right? So you pass the ball to the interviewer, they pass the ball to you as an interviewee. Um, of course, ideally, the ball should be passed equally, but there are times when the interviewee fails to pass the ball, or the interviewer fails to pass the ball. So if, for example, there's dead air, all right, and the interviewer is not being very receptive or not being very open towards you, you can ask them, do you have any questions, or would you like to know more about this particular job experience of mine, or would you like to know about this particular accomplishment of mine? So save try to save the conversation or the interview by asking the interviewer probably what they want to ask you. Okay, so I think I'm just thinking of this on the spot. I mean, this is how I imagine it could be if, like right now, I'm stuck in an awkward interview. I think that's what I would do. All right, so thank you, Adrian. We have a question from Shane Ruiz from 12 Franklin. So her question is, How do you set yourself apart from the others who want the same job? Okay, so this is another common question that interviewers ask. It's usually along the lines of, why should we hire you when there are other candidates out there? What you do is you sort of, this is just my suggestion. Of course, you can ask other people for suggestions as well. What you can do is you summarize your strengths, um, your accomplishments, your abilities, your talents, and also your character in answering that question. So I think I would answer that question. Why you should hire me is that apart from my educational attainment, I have the drive and I am highly motivated as an employee to meet standards or to even go beyond them. My writing skills would benefit the company greatly when producing written materials for the public. I'm a team player. I can also lead a team as I am both a follower and a leader, and so on and so forth. I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So I think you can say it in such a way. But remember to still not sound condescending or sound as if you're bragging about what you've accomplished. All right, so thank you, Shane, for that very interesting question. Okay, so we have one from Jarko Manzanilla from 12 Franklin. What will or what may the interviewer's response once said that an individual or the person being interviewed already has multiple jobs? I hope I'm interpreting the question properly. So the the interviewee or the applicant already has multiple jobs. Um, it's obviously the interviewer would be puzzled as to why the interviewee is still applying for a job for their company despite having multiple jobs already. It's actually uncommon. I think it's not a very common thing to happen in when it comes to job hunting and everything. Like for example, I already have a full-time job, which is teaching here in Jasms, Manila. So I wouldn't apply for another job because I already have my hands full with this one. But obviously, if in a twist of events, that sort of situation does happen. Of course, the interviewer would be shocked. The interviewer would be puzzled and confused, and might even question the interviewee because most companies, something that an advice I can give you is that most companies, they also look for people who are loyal to their company. So there, if that's the case, unfortunately, the interviewee who already has multiple jobs might not be considered for the position that they are applying for. Right? Because one of the things that companies look for is if you can remain loyal to them as a worker, as an employee. So that means if they can be your one and only job, all right? So it's hard to specifically say or describe how the interviewer is going to respond in that situation, but definitely it would have a bearing on your status as an applicant if you already have multiple jobs. Right? So thank you so much for that, Jarko. Oh, and we have another one from Shane Ruiz again. From 12 Franklin. I think this is the right grade level. What career mistake has given you the biggest lesson? Personally, I haven't had drastic career mistakes such as being a corrupt team leader or something to that effect. I haven't done anything like that. But I would say in my previous employment, over the past few years. I would say that I wasn't, or how do I phrase this correctly? I sort of delayed my own goals because I was so focused on work. So I make it a point now to sort of align my own goals to the job that I eventually want to have in the future. And at where I am right now, I can safely say that they are aligned. So I guess that's another tip for you. Okay, so thank you, Shane, for that question.
So I guess Shane Ruiz is actually our last student to ask. First of all, teacher, I would want to congratulate you for delivering a well seminar and actually answering the questions very well. So I also would want to thank the students for actually cooperating in today's seminar because without you guys, this event or this seminar wouldn't uh, happen. So this is all for you. And Teacher Noel, I really, really want to congratulate you for a very well made seminar. So guys, thank you so much for cooperating. Ayun. So again,
Thank you
thank you
so
very much.
much, Zach. And
Yeah.
also to our fellow teachers, Teacher Regina, Teacher Nolly, and also all the students who are here, and all the advisors as well, and to our teachers in the tech team. So thank you guys, and I hope this helps, especially with the grade 12 students. So thank you so much, and good luck.
So ayun. Again, thank you very much, Teacher Noel, for this morning well spent to help us improve our communication skills. With that, let us have Teacher Nolly Rodriguez, our assistant principal, for the awarding of the certificate of recognition to our resource speaker.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We would like to thank you, to thank Teacher Noel. So I think all of us will agree that we are off to a great start after listening to her and her practical advices. This morning has been great and our students did great as well. Okay, so to award the certificate of recognition, may I read this? The Philippine Women's University Jose Abad Santos Memorial School awards the certificate of recognition to Maria Noelle Motril for sharing her expertise as a resource speaker on the topic Oral Communication Skills in English 101, creating a good impression through an impactful self-introduction. As part of Jasms Manila Grade 12 Work Immersion Pre-Employment Seminar Workshop Series for school year 2020-2021, given this 22nd of January 2021. Signed, yours truly, Noli Rodriguez, Assistant Principal, Regina de la Cruz, MSc, Acting Principal. Thank you again, Miss Maria Noel Motril. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Teacher Nolly. I appreciate this. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Teacher Nolly and Teacher Noel. Now, let us have Teacher Kirvin Duterte, one of our work immersion teachers, for the end remarks and reminders before we proceed to our workshop.
So thank you for that, Zach. Good morning, everyone. So we would like to thank you all for your participation in today's event. Please be reminded that your workshop output shall be done at your own pace, but must be submitted to your work immersion teachers not later than Monday at 5 p.m. You may seek assistance from your teachers during your next work immersion period, as well as the afternoon consultation hours. Feedback will be given on your submissions, not in the purpose of rating you or giving you grades, but to help you improve your communication skills, which is really very important when you apply for a job. Excuse me. And even in university interviews. We sincerely hope that our session today left you something you can use for your growth and improvement. Thank you once again, everyone.
Thank you very much, Teacher Q, and we'll definitely put them in mind. Again, this is just the start of our immersion sessions. My dear batchmates, as we are nearing the end of our senior high school journey, let us make these experiences worthwhile. This has been Zachary Vega, your Masters of Ceremonies for today's event. Please remain in the stream for the Jasms song and the PWU hymn.